making high school bearable.
Shout out to the Denebola 5657 advisory for making Waffle Tuesdays a thing.
Shout out to my FM Lit class for always being a place of love and safety.
Shout out to Miss Choi for getting me through high school.
Shout out to the custodial staff at South for keeping South beautiful.
Shout out to the girls varsity basketball team for being my second family.
Shout out to Caroline and Emily for being the best support system.
Shout out to Mr. Drury for being the best teacher in the world.
Shout out to this pizza gum for making our breath super fresh.
Shout out to all of the custodians for just making this place a really clean and really wonderful place to learn.
Shout out to Buns for being crazy and weird and cultish.
Shout out to Pearl for all the good times. R.I.P. Sal.
Shout out to Katie Goldstein! Sabrina Wason!
Shout out to Todd Alwell. You're awesome.
Shout out to Sophia Morgan for being pretty amazing.
Woo! Shout out to Isaac for carrying pizza for me that one time.
Shout out to Homer for being amazing.
Shout out to Mr. Lee for being the best college apparel day photographer!
Shout out to Girls Lacrosse for being a family.
Shout out to Miss Anderton for coming to school every day with a smile.
Shout out to Midori St. Jolo for driving me to get boba really late in the night.
Shout out to Wise for letting me drop Neuro.
Shout out to my RCG gals for being dope.
Shout out to Mr. Thomas Lee for being the best teacher ever.
What?
Shout out to my French class for always having food.
Shout out to my boy Gary Johnson, 2020.
Shout out to Teacher Kyle Nunes for being a dope teacher and a great guy.
Shout out to Katie Kaufman because I was out of class for 3 days and she just saw me in the hallway and asked me if I was okay. And it was a very small thing, but it meant a lot to me.
Shout out to Wales for eating water.
I'm so happy.
Shout out to Rhea for making me do this on the spot.
Teacher shout out to Miss Choi, my guidance counselor, for being really understanding, for putting me first, and for helping me through a really hard time.
Shout out to my friend for being awesome!
Shout out to Miss Henderson for being the most understanding teacher I've ever had.
Shout out to Nabil for making my life so amazing.
Shout out to Enrique for inspiring our entire soccer dance. Shout out to the custodian for making some clean.
Shout out to Miss Alpern for being our teacher for the past 2 years and for being the best teacher ever.
Shout out to Vic for being the best person ever.
Shout out to Ariel Fine for always uplifting the mood no matter what room he comes into.
Shout out to Mr. Rinaldi for rocking socks and pants.
I'd like to say a major shout out to Mr. Gagnon for helping me with the whole college process and just being a great ally and friend. Yeah, he's been amazing. I think he's like one of the key people at South.
Shout out to Lawyer Mom!
Shout out to Mr. Lewis for being the best role model.
Shout out to Dreamfire for proving the impossible is possible.
Shout out to Kat.
Shout out to the girls soccer team for winning DCLs.
Shout out to the girls volleyball team for not winning the DCLs but being a great community.
Shout out to all the class officers and class advisors and Senate people for making this year awesome for our seniors.
Shout out to all the social justice groups on campus for teaching our student body to care about making change in the community and the world.
Shout out to Miss Penny for being a queen!
Shout out to Miss Sumner's room for allowing me to sleep during my free blocks.
Shout out to Miss Davidson for helping me get through all 4 years of high school.
Shout out to Victoria, Brianna, and Sarah for being the best biffles ever.
Shout out to Miss Chen for being an integral part of our senior year.
Shout out to him.
Shout out to Sydney for making me smile.
Shout out to Mr. Rinaldi for being an incredibly passionate teacher and inspiring his students to learn more about history.
Shout out to Mr. Casino for being the greatest advisory teacher.
Shout out to Miss Siegel for helping us out every day.
Thank you for always dealing with our issues. We appreciate it.
Shout out to Mr. Banks for always being there for me.
Shout out to Dr. R for always being so compassionate and empowering.
Shout out to Pete Wise for being my captain.
Shout out to Links for giving us friendships for life.
Shout out to Senor Hesa for being a great human.
Shout out to Isabella, Kayla, Zoe, and Ava for being the best friends ever and for being the best squad at South. Just saying.
Shout out to Miss Castle for doing an independent research project with me last year.
Shout out to Dr. R for caring so much about the students she teaches and for ensuring that she creates a community environment in the classroom.
Shout out to Miss Penny for making photo great this year.
Shout out to Elijah Lawrence for being an amazing person. He's over there. He's great.
Shout out to Mr. Hill and Miss Ames for making our freshman year a great start. Yeah.
Shout out to Miss Taub for all the essays.
Shout out to Dr. Roy Chowdhury for always caring about her students and always trying to make better citizens at Newton South. Newton South would not be the same without her.
Shout out to Mr. Gagnon! Always had our back.
Shout out to Mr. Lee. We love you. You're so great.
Shout out to Mr. Rinaldi for changing my life.
Shout out to Mr. Parlin for being incredible. Shout out to Mr. Burt for being the best marine bio teacher ever. He's right there.
Shout out to Mr. P for being the teacher that I get to wake up to on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and see his face. It's pretty fun. Make bio a lot of fun.
Shout out to Mr. Lee for dressing up in that awesome shark costume. Go him!
Shout out to Dr. R for being an angel.
Shout out to Miss McChesney for being the best chemistry teacher ever.
Shout out to Mr. Davison for having such an impact on South, especially on the class of 2017.
Shout out to all the teachers at Newton South and all you do for us. You put in so much time and effort, and I really appreciate it. And I've become such a more intelligent and knowledgeable and caring person because of you all. And I'm just so thankful for everything that you do. So, love you guys.
Shout out to Rhea for making this video.